Hey guys, Tyler here. The Gorn are one of the most recognizable alien species in Star Trek. First appearing in the original series episode Arena, the Gorn have, so far, just over a dozen canon appearances throughout the franchise. But their impact on popular culture has been substantial nonetheless. A bipedal reptilian race, the Gorn have butted heads with the Federation on multiple occasions. But by the 24th century, much like with the Klingons, relations with the Gorn seem to have cooled down. In the meantime, the Gorn have always represented a formidable opponent. Despite their monstrous appearance and aggressive demeanor, the Gorn are cunning, intelligent, and technologically advanced. In this video, I'd like to explore the history, biology, and culture of the Gorn and compare them to our expectations about aliens in real life. I'd also like to examine how their relationship with the Federation has changed over time. Let's get started. The Gorn's interstellar government is called the Gorn hegemony. Its domain includes a region of space called the Five Systems, referenced by Orion privateer Harad Sar in the Enterprise episode Bound. However, Harad Sar says of the Gorn, the less said about them, the better. More information about the Gorn's potential origins is revealed in the non-canon 2013 Star Trek video game, which is set in the alternate reality introduced in the 2009 movie. In this game, the Gorn are said to have originated from another galaxy, which they have colonized under the banner of the Gorn Armada. The Gorn reach the Milky Way via a wormhole and begin expanding into the Beta Quadrant, just outside the borders of both the Federation and Klingon Empire. Much like other non-canon sources, this game and subsequent IDW companion comics emphasize that the Gorn are not a singular species, but rather an alliance of genetically similar reptilian aliens. One of these factions, which is settled on the planet Parthenon 559, is depicted as rebelling against the Gorn Armada, suggesting that the Gorn are not all of one mind when it comes to politics. Either way, the existence of multiple Gorn species, which other non-canon sources alternatively depict as strict castes, is used to explain the disparities between different canon depictions of the Gorn. The video game Starfleet Command explains that Gorn society is organized into a hereditary monarchy. Gorn mythology speaks of a mistress of fertility, Siaza, who saved young Gorn eggs from being devoured by a figure called the Great Father. Clearly, this is a reference to the Greek goddess Rhea saving Zeus from being devoured by Cronus. Star Trek Online expounds upon Gorn history by speculating that they may share a common ancestor with the Saurian species, stretching back about 15,000 years, which doesn't really seem like a lot of time, but whatever. This ancestor race may have inhabited planets in the Kasei system, some 40 to 60 light years from Earth. Other sources cite Gorn space travel as far back as thousands or even millions of years ago. And between these various accounts, there's no consensus as to whether the Gorn evolved on a single homeworld or on separate homeworlds. All of this also seems to contradict Gorn activities beyond the Milky Way galaxy, but ultimately there's no telling where they originally came from. They could have come from the Milky Way galaxy or another galaxy first, traveling between the two via a mechanism like, say, the mycelial network.
The mycelial network is like
mycelial network! In any case, what's clear is that they have developed space travel by the 22nd century and developed a violent reputation among various other Beta Quadrant civilizations. We're never explicitly told what kind of star the new Gorn homeworld orbits, but in Beta continuity, it's the 9th planet in a triple star system consisting of 3 K-type orange stars. while the habitable zone of a K-type star, usually smaller and cooler than the Sun, is about 60% the size of Sol's habitable zone. The triple nature of the star system may mean that the ninth planet is further out in a tightly packed planetary system. K-type stars' habitable zones are also generally more stable, as those kinds of stars emit less light in the ultraviolet portion of the spectrum, which normally has severe effects on DNA molecules. It's also worth noting that planets orbiting multiple stars in a P-type orbit are generally stable if they orbit at least 2 to 4 times the distance of the separation between the stars themselves. The name Tau Lacertae is thrown around in various non-canon sources as the name of the Gorn's home star system, Lacerta being a real-world constellation whose name means lizard in Latin. Get it? And Tau, of course, is the 19th letter of the Greek alphabet. But there is no star in real life called Tau Lacertae? Lacertae? Lacerti?
Lacertae or Lacerti.
And there are no notable triple K-type systems in Lacerta. But what we can gather is that even if the Gorn did not evolve on Tau Lacerti 9, they no doubt selected it to colonize because of its environment. The planet, also known as Gornar, has a surface gravity of 1.4 g, implying it has a higher mass, radius, and possibly density compared to Earth, much like most exoplanets that we've discovered in real life. And it's largely covered in tropical jungles and swampland. It has 2 Class D moons, which would have significant impacts on the planet's tides, and its surface temperature is likely higher than Earth's. Much like many Earth reptiles, particularly crocodiles, the Gorn are cold-blooded and possess scaly green skin, red blood, simple ear holes with no external cartilage, and vicious claws. They also have mouths full of sharp teeth, unsuitable for chewing. Indeed, the teeth of reptiles are generally undifferentiated in size and shape compared to mammals, whose teeth are more specialized. Gorn eyes are also often depicted as being silvery and faceted, much like the compound eyes of insects, suggesting a considerably different evolutionary path. Indeed, compound eyes have rather poor image resolution, but possess a larger viewing angle and the ability to detect rapid movement. Still, others have typical reptilian eyes with slit pupils, like the Tholian-employed slave master Slar in the Enterprise episode In a Mirror Darkly. They have at least 2 genders, male and female. Gorn have an average height of approximately 2 meters and tend to be many times stronger than most humanoids. Adult Gorn are slower and less agile than humans on average, but possess more durability and stamina. Unaided by the universal translator, the Gorn language sounds to most humanoids like a series of clicks and growls, as well as coughs resembling the throat clearing of a seasoned chain smoker. And as far as their lifespan, one source indicates that they can live for up to 300 years. This brings me to a discussion of the Gorn's life cycle. In the Gorn's earliest appearances, their growth and maturation cycle has never been explored that deeply, or really at all. Star Trek Into Darkness has an offhand line of dialogue suggesting that Gorn can become pregnant with live young.
Sweetheart, I once performed an emergency C-section on a pregnant Gorn. Octuplets. Let me tell you, those little bastards bite.
A phenomenon in nature known as viviparity. This is not so unusual for a reptilian being, as some Earth snakes and lizards don't lay eggs. In Season 1 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, however, we are treated to a much different, more thoroughly detailed explanation as to how the Gorn reproduce. And indeed, this is just one of a number of things about the Gorn that are a departure, so to speak, from previously established canon, or so it might seem at first. In the 4th episode of Strange New Worlds, Memento Mori, the character Laan Noonien Singh recounts how, as a child, she escaped from a Gorn breeding planet. On these planetary nurseries, Gorn deposit sentient beings to be used as breeding sacs or to be hunted as food by Gorn hatchlings. The adults will periodically return to these planets to harvest their young. As we see in the series' 9th episode, All Those Who Wander, Gorn hatch from parasitic eggs that incubate inside humanoid hosts. This is in contrast to the previously mentioned viviparity, pointing towards different methods of reproduction and/or the existence of, once again, different species of Gorn. Their maturation cycle depends on the species of the host, lasting months in some cases and days in others. When ready, hatchlings will rip their way violently from the host body in a clear homage to the xenomorphs from Alien. Newly emerged Gorn are white in color. They become green as they feed voraciously and grow rapidly in size, molting their skin along the way. Both the eggs and the hatchlings are biologically invisible to sensors. Rather conveniently, I might add. And despite their bestial nature, hatchlings can prevent themselves from being sensed telepathically. Gorn hatchlings are quadrupedal, and they are exceptionally fast and strong, in stark contrast to their adult forms. Not only are they uncontrollably aggressive towards other life forms, they are also aggressive towards members of their own species. Competing for dominance, only the smartest and strongest survive. Juvenile Gorn develop ducts that allow them to spit venom, which can infect additional hosts with eggs. As some have speculated, many of these other advantageous traits may be the result of genetic engineering. So how can this more fearsome depiction of the Gorn be reconciled with their other appearances throughout Trek? Well, the most straightforward answer is that Gorn hatchlings are simply more rambunctious and tend to mellow out, so to speak, as they age. Of course, mellow out being a relative term. Also, keep in mind the intelligence of human babies is nothing remarkable, being on average slightly lower than that of an untrained domestic dog. For comparison, trained dogs are the ones that work with police, the armed forces, on movie and TV sets as guides, shepherds, what have you. And feral dogs are logically somewhat more intelligent than a regular coddled pet dog, simply because they have to be due to their unfortunate circumstances. As humans mature, of course, our IQ goes up as we learn new things and master new skills. Much like the skills that you can master with today's sponsor. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Something that should be further emphasized as well is that many animals' final forms, if you will, are drastically different from their infant or even adolescent stages. I talk about one type of biological transformation, metamorphosis, in my video about the Metroids from, well, Metroid. Another species Strange New World's little baby Gorns are somewhat reminiscent of, little baby boys. While we don't know exactly how many times a Gorn molts its skin throughout its lifetime, this process is just one example of how the Gorn metamorphose during their life cycle, and their assumption of an upright stature later in life is once again perfectly in line with the maturation of an intelligent life form. Besides humans, bipedal locomotion is common among birds, the descendants of avian dinosaurs. And as I also demonstrated in my video about the Chozo from Metroid, birds are some of the smartest terrestrial animals, particularly crows. Another indication that the evolution of a sapient reptilian species is more plausible than one might think. Plus, if you're looking for further evidence connecting the Gorn we're familiar with their quadrupedal counterparts, let's not forget that Lorca had a Gorn skeleton among his menagerie aboard the Starship Discovery. Discovery obviously being a show that predates Strange New Worlds by just a few years and which shares the show's overall design language. Regardless, in Strange New Worlds, the Gorn are referred to on multiple occasions as monsters. Humans are merely prey to them, Lon emphasizes, and she dismisses the idea that they can ever be reasoned with.
Some things in this universe are just plain evil.
Of course, this is merely through the lens of one character's traumatic childhood experiences. It should be noted that such a roughshod, antagonistic approach to dealing with an enemy is not entirely out of character for a Starfleet crew in the mid-23rd century, and it's up to the discretion of individual captains as to how to deal with such matters. Besides, we do ultimately see that evidently, La'an is not correct that the Gorn can't be reasoned with. More on that later. In terms of the Federation's other dealings with the Gorn, despite multiple unofficial accounts by 2259, the Gorn have never been listed as officially contacted. This is primarily because the Gorn hardly ever leave survivors. In accordance with ritual, when Gorn hunt captives for sport on their breeding planets, one survivor is spared and put in a life raft jettisoned into space. The survivor is not expected to live, though La'an obviously did. The first official contact between the Federation and the Gorn does occur in 2267, when the Gorn attack a Federation colony on the planet Cestus III. The Gorn view their attack as a preemptive move, since they regard Cestus as part of their territory. The USS Enterprise pursues a Gorn starship into previously unexplored space, where both ships are immobilized by the super advanced and mysterious Metrons, who pit Captain Kirk and the Gorn captain against each other, against their will, in a contest of strength and ingenuity to the death. Kirk spares the brutish Gorn's life after Kirk is victorious, and the calculating but high-principled Q and the calculating but high-principled Metrons send both captains back to their respective ships and transport the Enterprise light years out of the area. Given how intelligent the Gorn are, they are surely keenly aware of the Federation's perception of them up to this point. So it's likely that this very encounter in Arena was an important stepping stone in the thawing of Federation-Gorn relations, as both cultures began to more fully appreciate each other's perspectives and moral systems. This is why, by the 24th century, the Cestus conflict is pretty much resolved. The Federation colony has been rebuilt, and Benjamin Sisko speaks of the Pike City Pioneers baseball team that hails from this planet's capital. This doesn't mean that the Federation and the Gorn have to be best buds, but once again, much like with the Klingons, open hostilities have apparently been reduced to a minimum. And even more has been done in recent Trek installments to, in a word, further humanize the Gorn. In Lower Decks, we see a Gorn wedding reception, and a Gorn chef works at a restaurant on Starbase 25. A Gorn is even referenced as having attended William T. Riker's bachelor party in an ultimately omitted line of dialogue from the first draft script of Star Trek Nemesis. While admittedly a lot of work must be done, both in-universe and out, to bridge this more peaceful depiction of the Gorn with their depiction as loose analogs of aliens' xenomorphs, the point is, the groundwork has already been laid for such a transition. So no, Ms. Noonien Singh, the Gorn can be reasoned with, much like has happened with the Romulans and numerous other antagonists throughout Star Trek. Given enough time, an enemy can become an ally, even a friend. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below and don't forget to share it. That stuff really helps me out. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that as well so you won't miss future uploads, and click the bell icon to receive all notifications. If you want to support my work even further, becoming a patron or a member is a great way to do so. Links to those, as well as my social media and merch store, are in the description. That's all I have for this week. Live long and prosper.